Members, please remain. Well, you are seated, so I don't ask you to stand up. A thought for the day to be offered by Chip Calhoun, who I now invite and speak to us. Thank you.
Hello, and I'm sorry that you have all obviously dressed up for the occasion, and I'm here stood looking like I've just been to two special needs schools in Lowestoft and Yarmouth, respectively. But I am really pleased to be here today because I want to share with you all just how important the places you represent are. They are so important. They are actually some of the most important places in the whole of English, maybe even world history. Because it was back in the days when these fields were still marshes that the land had been invaded by a Viking force led by some chap called Canute. You may have heard of him. And Canute knew that people in these parts didn't like the Danish too much, so he took it upon himself to dress himself up as an Englishman and start exploring this area. I think he came to this area first because it was quite flat, and you know that the Danish and the Vikings, they like their oceans, so it probably reminded him of that. And it was actually quite easy for a Dane to disguise themselves as an Englishman, because you know the Danes typically, they wore very similar clothes. The only real difference was that they did their hair much more nicely. So to disguise himself as an Englishman, all he needed to do was rough himself up a bit and throw some mud on his face. And he was going around this very area when it started to get dark. He was all alone. He was a little bit worried about being caught out in the marshes at night. And he found a little English house where he just chanced to knock on the door. He tried to put on his best English accent and said something along the lines of, "Hello, I am English and I'm lost, and could I possibly have a bed for the night?" And the rather large Englishman stood before him, decided that he would take a chance and let this stranger in. And he introduced him to his son, who was sat there looking quite shy, sitting at the table. And he went and he made his pot of eels or something, while Canute, there in his disguise, was trying desperately to befriend this young boy who was there sharpening an eel spear. And for whatever reason, he couldn't seem to get anything out from this boy. And eventually along came the Englishman with the eels, and they ate and they slept. And it was a really good sleep. In the morning, Canute woke up thinking he had to reward these Englishmen somehow for their hospitality. But he thought he'd better clear off before they realised who he was, and the night didn't end quite so well. It turned out the Englishman was snoring away, like Englishmen often do. The boy was gone, so he left the house and he started walking out when he heard some beautiful singing from down by the river. I think it was called the Ouse or something. And he went down to the river, and he knew there was this girl singing there, and he just wanted to say thank you for enhancing his morning. But what he found was a girl who was quite clearly the boy from the night before. This was definitely, I mean, she was bathing, so you know how he knew, but he could also tell from looking at her face, this was definitely the boy before. And instantly, he wanted to know why she had been in disguise. After revealing himself and saying that he was the king, declaring his secret, he managed to convince the girl to disclose hers, which was that these foreigners had come over, these Italian monks, and they'd started kidnapping women and girls in order to do... Well, do you know what? You're not kids here, so I don't have to give you the sanitized version. You know exactly what the monks were doing with the women and girls from this area. And they had already taken this girl's mum, the Englishman's wife, and to make sure this didn't happen to his daughter, he disguised her as a boy. So Canute wanted to put this right. And one of the ways he did that was by going to the monastery and catching the monks red-handed and forcing them then to start building some of the towns and cities around this place. But he also passed a law which you can still find now if you go all the way up to York. It's hidden in York Minster. But it reads almost exactly like Magna Carta, which wouldn't come for another 200 years later. And this was a law that basically said everybody in the whole country that Canute now ruled would have equal access to the law, equal rights. It was the first Western equal rights law. And it ended up becoming the model for Magna Carta, the model for our Constitution, the model for the US Constitution. It started right here, but it started right here with power coming to the people, wanting to find out what the people wanted, and the people working with that power. Women, the girl, and the king, there's gender boundaries crossed there, class boundaries, nationality boundaries, because he was Danish, she was English. All of this started right here in our area. And that's the tradition that you folks are keeping going right now. So please do keep that in your heart as you proceed with the rest of your meeting. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Chip. That's very much appreciated. Thank you. We now turn to item 2 on your agenda, the minutes. Is everyone agreed that I sign the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 11th of December as a correct record of the meeting? All right. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Item number 3, members' interests. Are there any interests that members would like to declare in relation to any agenda item this evening? No? Thank you. Item number 4, Chair and Vice Chair's engagements and announcements. I'd like to turn your attention to my engagements list on page 23 of your agenda. These are engagements which I've undertaken since the previous council meeting held on the 11th of December 2024. I would like to mention that it was a great privilege to represent Huntingdonshire at the Holocaust Memorial Service in Peterborough there. It was a very solemn but a very important event, and I think it's important that we continue to observe this year on year. Also, being that time of the year and we're coming out to the end of the financial year, I have contacted my charities, being the Papworth Trust and also Magpass, and they are now in receipt of the funds to buy the various items they've asked for. The Papworth Trust have bought themselves an art cabinet and various art supplies, because they do a lot of good work with art and craft over there with the people they look after. Also, Magpass have bought some specialised pumps. It's a bit technical, but they help to get medicines and drugs into patients quickly when they actually need it. And I'm delighted at this because it is a real life-saving thing. So I just thought you might like to know that. Okay. Moving on now to item number 5, questions by members of the public. In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 10.1, I understand that we've received a public question submitted in accordance with our public question scheme. I will now invite this individual to address this question to the Executive Councillor. Mr. Morris, would you like to come and address the Council, please? And you have 2 minutes or thereabouts. Thank you.
Good evening. And thank you, Chairman, for allowing me the opportunity to address the Council this evening. I just about remember how to operate the microphone. My question this evening, Hunt's Walking and Cycling Group was established in 2019 to support active, safe and sustainable travel in Huntingdonshire. We are pleased to see that the Council aims to create a well-connected, accessible and sustainable active travel network that benefits residents, businesses and visitors. We are also pleased to see that the Council is currently running an online survey to help shape future priorities and ensure that the improvements meet the needs of local communities. We are particularly pleased to see that, as a doer, the Council will support active travel improvements that enhance safety and accessibility, such as segregated cycle paths, safer routes to employment and education, and designated school streets where feasible. The closing date for people to complete the active travel survey is the 16th of March this year. This will be 1 year to the day that Mike Goff, a road safety campaigner and founder member of the Hunts Walking and Cycling Group, was killed whilst riding his bicycle in Huntingdon. I would like to extend an open invitation to all members of the council to join us as a short memorial event with members of Mike's family that will be held at the Mike Goff Ghost Bike on Sunday the 16th of March at 11 a.m. at the Sebastopol Cannon on George Street, Huntingdon. And my short question tonight is, what plans does Huntingdonshire District Council have to invest in active travel in Huntingdonshire in 2025-26, and how much money will be earmarked to help to deliver some positive outcomes on the ground in the coming financial year? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wakeford, I believe.
Thank you, if you're happy me staying here, Chair. I'm responding with executive portfolio responsibility covering infrastructure. Thanks for your question. So, as you know, John, but for others' benefit, formal responsibility for active travel sits with Cambridgeshire County Council in their role as the local highways authority. So, as a rule, we as a district council don't invest directly in active travel. However, we do place great importance upon it and consider it carefully as part of our infrastructure planning. I'm sure we will recognise the significant role active travel and other non-motorised user transport can play in supporting the health and well-being of our residents, and also the economic opportunities that can arise from a visitor economy with a strong leisure element. So we work closely with the County Council and the Combined Authority and have influenced a range of their plans and strategies in promoting active travel and non-motorised user transport options. We continue to negotiate active travel solutions as part of Section 106 agreements to ensure new communities are well connected. And we've awarded SIL grants in recent years with active travel elements. We're currently working with statutory stakeholders over the A428, East West Rail and the Fens reservoirs in particular to ensure active travel is a core part of their legacy for Huntingdonshire. And right now, we're using funding obtained through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund to undertake feasibility work for potential future routes. So members will hopefully have seen the active travel engagement exercise that you mentioned in your question. This is to provide evidence that can be used to secure investment to construct new and improved routes and or as evidence for the new local plan that we're developing. So while we aren't in a position to answer your question as directly as you might hope, given the responsibilities, John, we are leveraging the role we do have to maximise opportunities for active travel for residents in Huntingdonshire into the future, and I hope that's helpful.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford, and thank you.
May I just say thank you for your comprehensive answer. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 6. Final 2025-26 revenue budget and medium-term financial strategy 26-27 to 29-30. Will members please turn to page 25 of the agenda and report by the Director of Finance and Corporate Resources. The formal council tax resolutions are included in your council book on pages 68 and 69. Members will note that the agenda, it is a lawful requirement that a recorded vote be taken on the conclusion of the debate on this item in accordance with the Local Authorities Standing Orders England Amendment Regulations 2014. We are required under these regulations to record within the minutes the names of those who have cast a vote for the decision, against the decision, and who abstained. Once we reach this part of the proceedings, the Elections and Democratic Services Manager will call out members' names one by one, and you will be asked to indicate how you are voting. Only those members that are present for discussion on the whole item will be allowed to vote. I may also remind members when seconding a motion or amendment to reserve the right to speak to enable the speech later in the debate. I would emphasise that if people walk out during the debate and they come back in, then they won't be able to vote. I would suggest that if anybody is in dire need to leave the meeting for a while, they put their hand up, and I will allow a very short break while they need to do whatever it is, and we will be concerned because I don't want anybody to miss the vote. So thank you very much for that. Councillor Mickleborough, will you please introduce the item and move any recommendations? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. There is a lot to cover. I will go in the order of the Treasury Management Strategy, including the Capital Strategy, the Investment Strategy, and the Annual Prudential Indicators, the Annual Minimum Revenue Provision Statement, the Fees and Charges Schedule, the Formal Resolution to determine the Council Tax, the 25-26 Budget, and the medium-term financial strategy for the period 26-27 to 29-30. This year's Treasury Management documents have been slightly changed in response to 6 small amendments required by the Treasury Management Code as to how we present the data. There are also changes to the way that minimum revenue provision must be calculated and reported, particularly around the inclusion of all capital finance requirement elements. However, as our borrowing is relatively simple, we only have to worry about one small part of that change. Regardless of the changes required of us, I am determined to continue to make our finance reports as clear as possible and as easy to understand as they can be. The Treasury Management Strategy before you is the first report of the 25-26 cycle. It explains how cash flow, borrowing and investment are to be managed, and also provides the prudential indicators and the calculations and estimates for the revenue costs of capital known as the minimum revenue provision. In addition, it outlines the controls associated with the risks introduced by these activities and how we will pursue optimum performance consistent with those risks. The Treasury Management Strategy is very similar to last year, with changes being a gentle evolution, not a revolution, and the majority of the content structured by regulation. Counterparty limits, the amount of money we can place within certain institutions, remains unchanged from last year, although we made significant increases last year to preempt falls in interest rates and facilitate a wider variety of counterparties, as some of those had minimum investment limits beneath our previous maximum investments allowed. Last year, I talked about how we would look at increasing our environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, investments. However, the Government Debt Management Office, or DMO, rates have remained in line with general interest rates, and we chose not to diversify. DMO is the mechanism by which our peer councils can borrow money at lower interest rates and avoid passing taxpayers' money to commercial banks and moneylenders. This seems an effective equivalent to ESG, and as a result, I am content that we continue to take this option. The minimum revenue provision statement shows our compliance with the required loan repayment schedule that ensures we set aside enough to pay our debts. These are technical finance documents where content changes tend to be in response to the budget or legislation. Overview and scrutiny review and comments are therefore about clarity and accuracy rather than the decisions made. A recurring question in response to Treasury management reports is around interest rates and our mapping of the prediction to our budget. The interest rate forecasts that we use come from our Treasury advisor via MUFG Corporate Markets, and these are displayed on page 98 of the pack. Forecasting interest returns from investments made in the DMO is difficult because there is no history of data to assess the difference that changes to the Bank of England base rate will have against DMO rates. Therefore, a prudent view is taken. The fees and charges schedule is a 45-page long document and may be browsed at your leisure. The council tax resolution contains a lot of technical information, but the key element is the HDC increase of 3.11% or £5 a year in council tax for a Band D property in 25-26 to £165.86. Ah, hurrah, there we go. This slide shows, if it's readable from a distance, CPI inflation over the previous few years. CPI inflation stood at 3% for the 12 months to January 2025, and CPIH, the measure including housing costs, stood at 3.9%. Chart is very small to see. A bit of a commentary. Starting at January 2015, we are showing year on year the dark blue in CPI inflation, light blue is inflation in goods, the purple is inflation in services, and the green is inflation of CPI inflation, excluding energy, food, alcohol, and tobacco. Inflation first started to climb as we approached the winter of 2022 and the energy market became nervous at the Russian manoeuvring on the Ukrainian border. Inflation has shown signs of settling down more recently, but has continued to put unavoidable pressure on council activities. The narrative of inflation falling from 5% to 3% makes it sound as if prices will fall, which is not the case. Inflation at 3% means, on average, an item that cost £1 last year will cost £1.03 today. Prices only fall if inflation turns negative. This means that for council tax to stand still in real terms, and by real terms, I mean to obtain the same equivalent spending power as this time last year, it must increase by the rate of inflation. Over the last 3 years, the rate of inflation has been higher than the increase allowed in council tax, as a district council is capped at £5 or 3% per year. This is different from taxation like VAT or PAYE on income tax. There, an increase in the price of an item or a rate of pay sees an increase in the tax take without an increase in the base tax percentage. This is just one of the many problems with council tax, which many people here, I am sure, will remember was just a sticky plaster on a bit of a political mess in 1990, but that nobody has been brave enough to fix since. Moving on to the budget and the MTFS. This time 2 years ago, I stood here and said that we got lucky. A central government minimum funding guarantee grant had kept our heads above water, following a surge in inflation, as just mentioned, caused primarily by energy prices. This time last year, I said that the budget was reassuringly boring, with things ticking over nicely and the focus as being on the improvements for our residents, not fretting about how to balance the budget and the MTFS. This year, circumstances have changed to tighten finances, while, perhaps surprisingly, creating a level of uncertainty greater than the previous couple of years. The budget is not the main story, however. It remains boring compared to what is happening across this council. The headline points are the employers' national insurance increase, the white paper in December announcing local government reform, and the jump in the MRF, or Materials Recovery Facility, contract price. The employers' national insurance increase pushes our employment costs up by £650,000 for the new budget year, while additional government support to cover this cost is only £245,000. In effect, the difference takes almost all of the extra revenue raised by the increase in council tax for the year ahead. Local government reform is less of a wild card and more of a joker card. For the benefit of the wider audience, if the plans follow through, it is almost certain that Huntingdonshire District Council will cease to exist over the next 3 years and will be replaced by a new authority that also takes on the county council responsibilities. This makes planning anything into the medium or longer term awkward. Partly because we do not know yet, in terms of reference, how we will operate or how the future council will operate. But it is also because it is very possible that the members in this chamber this evening will be the last representatives of HDC. In this uncertainty, what I am sure of, because I've seen it and observed it over the last 3 years, is that everyone here wants the best for their residents. One of my guiding principles is best summarised by the quote attributed to James Freeman Clarke that reads, "A politician thinks of the next election, a statesman thinks of the next generation." In order to make local government reform in our area deliver for future generations, we must avoid short-term thinking and instead be data-driven and free some time and space for officers and politicians to actually engage with the challenge. Nothing in the announcements or letters received so far says that central government will offer any such support. So a £1 million fighting fund is being set aside from reserves to enable activities towards engaging with this challenge. It will fall under normal sign-off limits, but it aims to bring that reassurance that as all group leaders and members wrestle with this challenge, there is a resource present and ready to call on as and if required. The MRF contract was entered into the MTFS at £900,000 per year last year, but the final outcome is £1.2 million per year, £300,000 higher than our estimated midpoint. The contract cost increase is driven by uncertainty, there's that word again, around the deposit return scheme and the future of the recycling levy on packaging in commercial businesses and retailers. The deposit return scheme is set to launch in autumn 2027 and will see single-use plastic bottles and cans have a deposit levy placed on them. This deposit is refunded when they are brought back to a return point, rather like the old Corona bottles of pop, hence the picture. It is assumed that this scheme will reduce the quality of material we collect on the doorstep and therefore increase the costs of running the service because it will reduce the potential revenue. These changes and uncertainties remind us of the ongoing need to continue to look for improvements across every part of how we deliver for residents. While we continue to encounter a tight financial environment, the good news stories from our prudent running of the finances continue, as these examples testify. For the first time, One Leisure is making a surplus. This means that it is contributing to the health of residents without being a burden on council taxpayers who do not use the facilities. Membership income is up, admissions are up, St Ives and St Neots gyms have seen a refurbishment, and further work is planned to continue to drive this success story. The ability to be forward-thinking led to a trial using hydro-treated vegetable oil as an alternative to standard road diesel. We were able to offer this very successful trial in partnership with Cambridge Fire and Rescue, as well as Cambridgeshire Constabulary, and the outputs give some interesting options in terms of the next steps. Cost reduction isn't always about cost cutting. It is about having a bit of time, space, and resource to do things differently. If you have looked at the Q3 workforce report, you'll have seen the positive impact of running an executive search in-house. The new Chief Digital Information Officer for 3C ICT was recruited by the resourcing team at HDC rather than via an expensive external consultancy. I work in technology, and as a result, I was asked to be part of the interview panel, and I can testify to the quality of the candidates. As in my day job, I am also currently part of an interview panel, but at a global law firm who pay bigger salaries than we can, but who have not attracted better candidates than we managed to. Let's have a look at the headline numbers. At the last full council, a comment was made about the difficulty understanding local government finances by a layperson. I also recall the words of Gareth Davies, Comptroller and Auditor General of the National Audit Office, who commented that the finance documents councils are required to publish are inaccessible from an understanding point of view to most people. Our published documents are excellent, give a lot of detail, and meet the required outputs of legislation. But when income must be displayed as a negative number, many non-finance people are immediately confused. I've continually attempted to make the numbers I present here as accessible as possible, leaving the fine detail to be read in the reports and triple-checked by the eyes of overview and scrutiny panel members. Sometimes simplification can be assumed to align with obscuration. Our excellent reports prevent that. I've also heard calls for more detail. My fear is we end up looking like the UK tax code, which a few years back stood at 10 million words, where for comparison, the works of Shakespeare are just over 800,000 words. My aim is to present so that if our YouTube stream is watched by residents with no financial background, they are able to grasp an understanding of our budget position. To do that, first, and again, I hope you've brought your opera glasses, I have put up a slide that shows the difference between the calendar year and the financial year. So the Q1 of the financial year is Q2 of the calendar year, and similarly, Q1 of the calendar year is Q4 of the financial year. And unfortunately, the bar that indicates the Q3 outturn is obviously the wrong colour for the HDC computer system. That then carries into the MTFS, where you will have a year of budget year ahead of you, and then 4 financial years to make up the MTFS period. The key headline numbers for the budget are a net expenditure of £26.464 million, a budget requirement of £26.684 million, and a capital programme of £14.527 million. The line item details of the capital programme are shown in the pack in section 3, table 30. This breaks down the work expected and the minimum revenue provision required to be transferred to the revenue budget. I've said before that using statutory net expenditure number is unhelpful and it fails to actually illustrate our operations correctly. For example, our total staff cost is higher than the net expenditure number. In fact, it's higher by over £10 million. Therefore, what I would rather we focused on for the holistic overview is Table 7 on page 42 of the pack, or page 12 of 51 in the budget pack. This is the subjective analysis of spend and income. HDC turnover is budgeted at over £84.3 million, and I've attempted to simplify that table to make it more accessible. Reading down the list. Expenditure. This is the revenue money we spend out. Fees and direct grants includes money we charge as fees, as well as directly awarded grants for services like homeless provision. The balance to fund on my slide is the net expenditure figure you see in the core report starting at Table 2. Business rates, council tax and indirect grants are funding on the next list. Because the balance must always equal zero, a local government budget will always have a contribution to or from reserves, which means the final line. The key to reading a local government budget is to see if this contribution to reserves number contributes to or takes from reserves. This budget does not use reserves to balance it. Excuse me. The £200,000 contribution to reserves, however, is 0.2% of an £82 million budget. Let me run through the details of each line. For expenditure, the most notable difference between this year and last is the salary changes. This increase is a combination of the impact of inflation, the national insurance changes, and the above inflation minimum wage increase. These increases will have a compounding effect on the future MTFS period. Notice first that the fees and direct grants is 5 times our council tax income. Our income and fees total shows the revenue from a range of sources, including charged fees, such as parking charges, garden waste subscription service, planning or licence application fees, direct grants from central government designated for specific purposes, such as homeless services, other direct grants from other bodies, rental income, and interest income. The balance to fund is, as mentioned, the net service expenditure, which then takes us to the net expenditure statement. This box shows the £221,000 contribution to reserves I mentioned earlier. As you scan across this line, you will see contributions to or from earmarked reserves, which are tied to the funding of specific activities, and the contribution to or from general reserves, which tie to the equalisation of the balanced budget. I mentioned earlier that finances had tightened faster than expected, and this slide illustrates that. On the top image is the 1.4 million estimated contribution to general reserves that we expected this year when drawing up last year's MTFS. However, that has fallen to zero. The government settlement was at the bottom end of what we hoped, and with local government reform in progress, it is difficult to know what will happen next, although a 2-year settlement has been promised. This is a reminder of the difficulty in predicting the level of discretionary grants from central government and re-emphasises a sensible policy decision made by an earlier administration to attempt to target financial self-sufficiency. We are now closer to self-sufficiency than at any time since that policy was announced. The higher than predicted uptake of the Garden Way subscription service, alongside progressive optimisation across the council, means that we continue to make progress in that direction. There remains many impediments to full budget confidence inside the 5 years of the MTFS. This year, as per the last 10, the government financial settlement was only 1 year ahead. We are promised that this will switch to a 2-year settlement, with advice perhaps as early as May. This will be welcome as it improves our ability to plan ahead. We were told last year that last year was the final year of New Homes Bonus, but we received a further award this year. NNDR rebaselining still hangs over us, with no clarity on the shape or impact. The risk is that as time progresses and our area grows, a larger amount of the revenue will be diverted away from us. The future of New Homes Bonus, fairer funding and NNDR are wrapped into a consultation published at the tail end of this year that closed a few weeks ago and was very clear on carrying across the levelling up redistribution principles from the previous Westminster administration. This is likely to hit our area harder. The Local Government Reform White Paper does not explicitly address whether we will face restrictions on our budget or spending, while examples from the combination of previous authorities do not give a clear precedent to work to. All of this creates impact on our ability to financially plan. However, we will continue to think strategically while acting tactically in line with our corporate objectives. The foundations of our finances are solid, and the budget gives us the confidence to continue taking positive action and apply forward thinking to meet the concerns of our residents for the year ahead. Thank you, Chair.
So, Councillor McBrow, you're proposing the budget. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Conboy.
If you'd forgive me, Chair, for remaining seated, the answer is I would like to second it and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. I now throw the debate open to the House. Thank you. Councillor Ross Martin.
Green. I'm on green.
One behind this one.
Yeah, we've got green now.
There's that. There we go. Thank you very much, Chair. Some technical issues, but now sorted. So I rise to make the amendment, the Conservative Group amendment in my name that was circulated earlier today via email. I believe Democratic Services have some paper copies if anyone needs one. First off, I'd like to thank the Chief Executive, Michelle, Section 15 Officer, Suzanne, the Chief Financial Officer, Sharon, and all of their teams for the help and support they gave Councillor Jennings and I in pulling these numbers together. It's a very quick turnaround of only a few weeks to get the numbers in, crunch and understand them. So we really do appreciate all the work and support that they have given us over the last couple of weeks. Huntingdonshire is a great place to live, it's a great place to work, and it's a great place to relax. But unfortunately, our market towns are struggling. We must draw people in to our area rather than pushing them away. Our amendment delivers for market towns supports local businesses and keeps council finances in check. Our proposal doesn't accept certain budget bids, cuts wasteful consultants, and makes some logical budget adjustments. This allows us to reverse the damaging increase in market traders' fees and offer 1 hour's free parking in all of our short stay pay and display car parks, whilst also reducing the need to draw on reserves across the MTFS. So how do we plan to fund these changes? So first off, budget bids that we will not accept. So just to be clear, these are not cuts. These are simply not accepting the cases made to us in budget bids that you'll find in Appendix A2. So Huntingdonshire Futures. It isn't clear how this is going to be spent. And after all, this is the administration's visionary strategy which they are trying to embed. Surely this is a leadership issue and not a need for extra spend in our budget. Digital communications and Let's Talk Huntingdonshire. We need to fix the communications, which requires a strategy, which we on this side have been calling for well over a year, not just throwing extra money at the problem. We keep being told that there's going to be a peer review in communications. Well, let's wait until we do the peer review before we make this decision. Show us the plan first. And on licensing and Pride in Place team, this one it was a really simple one, quite frankly, because within the council's own performance reports, it shows that there is no need for either of these two budget lines. PI 25 shows that we are already operating around 15% above our target on premise inspections. Where's the need? PI 22 tells us that 99.4% of sampled areas are already clean or predominantly clean. Again, what is the need? Why are we spending over £280,000 to fix a problem that barely exists under their own targets which they set? Second, we'll be reducing consultants' reliance. So £750,000 is earmarked for consultants next year. We've identified clear savings in the climate change strategy, place strategy, and local plan. So the climate change is something that we should take, and rightly so, very seriously. And in Huntingdonshire, I do think that is already happening. But I'm disappointed that Councillor Davenport Ray isn't here, because I'm sure she would have stood up and told us all why it's so important that we spend this money. But as we've all seen from Councillor Davenport Ray, she knows her stuff. She knows what she's talking about with climate action. So why are we paying a consultant to tell us what we already know? We on this side believe that Councillor Davenport Ray knows what she needs to do and should just get it done. The place strategy has already been approved. There is no need to pay consultants for things that we already know. Again, we need leadership, not more consultants. And the local plan is on track to be finished in December 2026. The Cabinet approved this only last week. So therefore, why do we need a budget past that point? So again, quite a simple cut. And then the third part, Mr. Chairman, is smart budget adjustments. Food waste collection isn't programmed to start until spring 2026, yet they have budgeted for full staff from day one of the next budget. Halving this allocation saves £300,000 without delaying recruitment, training or rollout. One leisure pricing. I know on this side it's always been a bit contentious with one leisure price increases, but I think that we should be following industry in having a modest increase of 2% every year. Obviously, if inflation is higher and we can raise it higher, we should, but I think setting a baseline of 2% is the right thing to do, and it keeps One Leisure sustainable as it is currently doing well. And finally, and one that's a little bit more difficult, is interest income. From my point of view, the budget has underestimated the revenue that we're likely to make from interest rates. If you compare this to this year, last year, and the year before, in some cases, interest income has been double what we'd expected in our budgets, including this year. So by reducing the amount that we're suggesting we're going to earn from last year to this year's budget doesn't make sense. So we have reset it to previous figures, which we still think is an underestimation, but we think that this is a prudent way of dealing with interest income. In total, this would reduce the revenue budget need by 3.5 million across the MTFS. So we've talked about the cuts, but how are we going to invest that money into Huntingdonshire? So first off, we will be reversing the harmful market traders fee increase. This is at a cost of just £9,000 per year or £45,000 across the MTFS, a very small price to pay to support small businesses, entrepreneurs and our markets. Second, we'll be introducing 1 hour's free parking in all short stay pane display car parks. This is from when CPE is implemented or brought into force, because there is already a planned price rise at the same time. So we will be bringing this in alongside, so there'll be no further implementation costs. This will cost £295,000 in year one, and then £590,000, or this will be a reduction in income of £295,000 in year one and £590,000 annually thereafter, totalling £2.655 million over the MTFS. So the bottom line, Mr. Chairman, this amendment reduces the reliance on reserves by 806,000 over the MTFS. It puts residents first, giving them a reason to shop locally, not taking their money elsewhere. And most importantly, it backs our market towns, supports local businesses and keeps council finances in check. I urge colleagues across the chamber to support our amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Do I have a seconder, please?
And I'd like to reserve my right to speak, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Okay, Councillor Sanderson, please.
So I think Councillor Wakeford will go first, if that's all right, and I'll follow him.
Thank you, Chair. The previous Conservative administration, who had control here for the best part of 50 years, up to 2 years, 9 months ago when we took over as a new administration. My time on this council does not extend that far, but in my time here, the previous administration were quite clear that to take budget proposals seriously, they need to be subject to scrutiny, whether in the form of a formal, full alternative budget, whether in the form of a more limited set of budgetary proposals. They were clear that those should, and they directed others to put proposals through the scrutiny process in exactly the same way we scrutinise our budget here today. I don't think that was political game playing by the Conservatives. I agree with them that it's simply not responsible to spring proposals to spend seven-figure sums of money at a matter of a few hours' notice. And I don't know about Conservative members, but many of us were working today. I suspect many of them were as well. So opportunity to read proposals is less even than ours. I think they felt that it was important to make proposals and have the opportunity to sense check them, to kick the tires on them, to work out what the consequences would be, whether they stack up in the way they might sound. Because often proposals sound sensible, and sometimes they can be, and sometimes they sound sensible and they don't make sense. So the basic reflection I wish to share with members really is that if these proposals were ones that the Conservative group actually wished to advocate and were confident in, they would have done what they challenged the rest of us to do, which is put them through the scrutiny process. Instead, they've chosen not to do that. And it's quite difficult to reach a conclusion that this is anything other than an attempt to posture on our budget, as opposed to a credible set of proposals for how to spend this council's money, which we take extremely seriously. So I will leave it there, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll tell you why we have the contributions towards the local plan in the budget bids. Is because we have to revise it every 5 years. So we have to go beyond 2017. And frankly, members across the aisle, many of whom are experienced in planning matters, who've served with great distinction on LPAG and put a lot of work in, I'm sure are fully aware of that. And evidence preparation is very expensive. So putting away a bit every year, each year, prevents unavoidable pressures in future years. That's pretty straightforward. But what this amendment does, is it risks us actually not having a local plan, not bringing in experts potentially who can help us. That will cause problems for our rural communities who want sustainable development, rather than risking remaining in tilted balance, which we had to do recently because of central government housing targets. And I'm sure members across the aisle don't want their villages to have all the housing growth at all costs, with no safeguards and no infrastructure, which would be in an updated local plan. That's why it's there. So as to climate change, which Councillor Martin says is extremely important, again, cutting this, I think you're proposing to take out £280,000 across the life of the NTFS from that, and you're taking out £243,000 from a local plan. But in climate change, how are you going to explain to residents, again in rural areas, who depend on our help as a council to source grants to insulate their homes, to cut their utility bills, or residents who have to deal with flooding, who are actually at less risk now in future because of our flood risk management projects, which may be jeopardised through these reductions. Look at what we've done in the communities in improving green areas and the grants we've given from our climate change projects. So this should have come really to scrutiny. Of course, it should have done its political posturing. We understand that. That's the nature of what we do. Of course it is. I've been here long enough to know that. But I'm sorry, I think this amendment is ill thought through, and I've only mentioned two parts of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Ferguson, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is going to be short for me, and I apologise for not being prepared because I hadn't seen the amendment. I've been at work all day, and I've got here and checked my emails, and so I don't know how you can expect any of us to vote on something we haven't been properly briefed or haven't even seen a paper copy of. So I find that quite offensive. I think it's lazy. Well, could I have a paper copy, please? Thank you.
I said that the first thing in my speech was that they're not. But anyway, because I asked them to be printed off talking.
To respond to your speech, Councillor Martin,
could you speak? Sorry.
So I have the floor. Thank you.
If people are going to speak, I know you had an issue, but can you speak via the chair, please?
Thank you, Chair. With regard to PL 25, which you mentioned, that refers to food safety inspections, and what we're asking for is that licensing officer to inspect licensed premises, which means the alcohol trade, which contributes to, I think, about 40% of violent crime in this country. Yeah, and it's something that under the Licensing Act 2003, we are legally required to do, and we don't do at the moment. So it's us trying to fulfil one of our statutory responsibilities, and I think, that's something we should do. So I won't be voting for this. I can't vote for it because I haven't seen the details. I'll try my best to read it now, and if you can convince me, I'll try, but I'm not going to vote for it, I don't think. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask members, could you please put your hand up if you do not have a copy of the amendment before you? Yeah, over there. Councillor Wakeford. Okay.
Chair, could I just clarify that we're debating the amendment now, and then we'll vote on that, and then we'll debate the proposal?
Yeah. It's the amendment. Correct? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I just pick up Councillor Gray's point, so just for clarity, although the substantive motion was proposed and seconded, Councillor Martin and Councillor Jennings have proposed an amendment and seconded, so that is what you are debating at the moment. When you've all finished speaking, there will be a debate on the a vote on the amendment. If the amendment fails, we go back to the substantive motion. If the amendment is carried, that becomes a substantive motion and everyone starts again. So just pick up Councillor Gray's point there so everyone's very clear what we're doing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Nathan Hunt, please.
Thank you, Chair. I speak to oppose this amendment, which shows that the Conservatives don't have a real or credible plan for our area. Instead, the Conservatives are willing to shred some of the best performing and most impactful parts of this council to pull off a populist stunt. This amendment would risk to put the delivery of the council's climate change strategy at risk, a strategy that has already seen this council take real action across all areas and was a key driver behind shifting the council's waste vehicles from diesel to sustainable HVO at a minimal cost increase. At a time where our district is already seeing the devastating impact of climate change, suffering from more frequent and more devastating flooding, this amendment shows that the Conservatives are refusing to look out for current residents and the next generation. On from this, cutting consultants is a nice soundbite, but it doesn't work if the resources aren't being reallocated to deliver that work. And this amendment doesn't do that. As such, the Conservative proposals aren't cutting consultants, they're cutting work being done to make our district better. One of the victims of this amendment would be a new Pride in Place team, working out and about in the community to help keep Huntingdonshire clean and tidy. During the State of the District debate last summer, the Conservative leader called for improvements to the visual state of the district. And now the Conservatives want to cut this new Pride in Place team, whose entire job would be focused on cleaning up litter, vandalism and graffiti across the whole of our district. That's an absolutely massive U-turn and seems like a slap in the face to the community, both in our market towns and in our rural areas. But what would the proposed carrots be in these proposals? Not increasing market fees. For a regular trader in Huntingdon, pitch fees are going up by about £3. The Conservatives want to gut this council to knock £3 off pitch fees. Our markets are performing well and they can handle this minor increase, especially with the support they get week in, week out from our amazing market staff. And 1 hour of free parking in short stay car parks, the same short stay car parks that are already well used and quite often full. This isn't a serious proposal and wouldn't benefit anyone using any of the car parks that aren't in the handful of short stay ones, or who don't drive, or who don't visit our market towns. Cutting council services for the whole district to benefit a small group, for the few, not the many, seems to be the new Conservative mantra. Chair, in summary, these proposals benefit a select few at the expense of everyone in our district, cutting some of the most important projects and some that the Conservatives called for. This isn't a plan, it's a bonfire. As such, I urge all members to vote against this amendment.
Councillor Simone Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will be touching on some of the items already spoken about, but this is something that I'm very, very passionate about. So I will touch on the Pride in Place team. I am very surprised that opposition are willing to forego a new Pride in Place team by removing it out of the budget in their amendment. As Councillor Hunt has just said, but please do cast your mind back. I think the last budget, where Councillor Gray stated his disappointment in litter found in the district, including linking roads to rural areas. I took his comments, Councillor Gray, through the chair, very seriously, and I worked with the head of environmental services to come up with a proposal of the Pride in Place team, which of course needs extra budgets over the next 2 years for this dedicated team to focus on special projects such as street cleaning, hotspot areas, which, yes, these are performance related, but the other areas that the team will look at which are not performance related are cleaning benches, street signs, bike shelters, bridges, anything else that can be within our remit at HDC. The team will work in conjunction with our towns and parishes and the community, and of course our much valued community litter pick groups, of which we have around 40 groups throughout the district. I am disappointed that opposition do not value what this team can bring to our communities. as I know that clean streets are at the heart of our residents. And if I may, Chair, just to pick up on markets and your proposal to cut the increased income in markets. We started this year rebaselining the market income. We did remove 67k out of budget. We have considered pitch fees carefully. These haven't changed since pre-COVID. Income has been stable throughout the last 3 years since 2022. We applied a reasonable increase to this service. The proposed increase helps the council achieve break-even point for the service. We are not making profit, it's break-even. The average increase is actually £4.76 a week, based on our traders having an average pitch size of 1.5 pitches. So maximum pitch is £25. I am aware that the previous administration gave 18 months free pitches during the COVID. To this, I am grateful. The main cost of running the markets is staffing, which is essential. When such important aspects such as health and safety, applying risk assessments and directing moving vehicles around is not taken lightly. Market services also pay non-domestic rates. The market traders do not, the market service does. I cannot support this amendment.
Councillor Brett Mickleborough, please.
Thank you, Chair. If the select few car drivers visit your selected car parks for a couple of hours every 2 weeks, you will save them just over £45 a year, but you will burn 2.6 million of council funds. That means spending must be diverted from elsewhere, or it carries an opportunity cost for things that cannot be done. Blindly cutting parking charges doesn't create a well-structured parking strategy. It doesn't address if there is still a reason for the differences across all of our car parks. It doesn't look at how the increases in NNDR that we must pay for our car parks impacts us. It doesn't address the challenges in car parks that are at capacity, as already mentioned. It doesn't actually state a reason for implementation. And then it compounds all of these failures by removing the budget source that actually allows these questions to be considered. So civil parking enforcement, or CPE, is a generational shift in parking and enforcement, and we currently expect that that will be implemented in August. You will produce poor strategy if you do not pause to collect data on the changes in behaviour that CPE will produce. This is why we've talked about revising the strategy at Cabinet, but have not done so yet. Can't really produce a strategy until CPE timing is clear, and producing a strategy before you're seeing the data from the impacts of CPE is also a bit of a waste of time. At the last Cabinet meeting, and in response to overview and scrutiny comments, we confirmed that we are going to produce a new strategy based on the data that comes out of at least the first 6 and possibly a full year of operating CPE. The strategy will start with the base question, why are we charging for car parking? I have 9 reasons that I have thought of, and there are smarter people in this room than me. So, what we want to do is fix the strategy for car parking. It is possible that CPE brings very rapid changes to behaviours, and we have penciled in a sensible time scale of October where the officers, Councillor Simon Table and myself, will review any impact. But the strategy will go through a process based on good, strong, data-driven decision-making. I think colleagues have covered the other items on the list that would be slashed and burned by this motion, and therefore I will not be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Tim Alban to speak, please?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I'll confine my comments just to one area, which is the climate change strategy. And I'm not sure whether there's been a deliberate distortion from the other side about what we're proposing or a misunderstanding. I'll give the joint administration the benefit of the doubt and say it's a misunderstanding. One of the things I really enjoy about this role as a councillor is being on the Climate Change Working Group and the Overview and Scrutiny Panel, where there are collegiate approaches across the parties to what's being proposed. There's a wealth of experience in the panel. There's a wealth of experience in the Climate Change Working Group. We are coming up with things in association with the portfolio holder, in association with the officers. And if we can do that, if we can be proactive and be creative and do that without consultants, then spending less on consultants, we can still achieve a climate change strategy that this district council can be proud of.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Hassel, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I have to say this debate feels rather like an overview and scrutiny committee, and I share the comments of other councillors who said that this should have come to overview and scrutiny. I think members have put a lot of effort into making overview and scrutiny committees work far better, and I'm really surprised that with this amendment that there are no recommendations were actually made via overview and scrutiny to Cabinet, because there may be some valid in some of these points despite the challenges raised from this side. I would say though, you've got my brief look at the amendment is there are 8 things out there and only primarily parking. And I think what we don't know, and I think it's Councillor Bickelberg raised that point, is that to make this assumption that we're going to regenerate our market towns by simply giving 1 hour's free parking, I'm not sure that's absolutely valid. So I think that going forward, I think this needs to come, or all this type of amendment can't be given out on the day. It's really, really important. It needs to go to overview and scrutiny, recommendations made by overview and scrutiny and agreed by overview and scrutiny, and then Cabinet take that on board and move forward. This bundling of lots of things together to try and raise the required capital for an hour's free parking, I don't think is particularly valid, and for that reason, I can't support this amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Bywater, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. The irony is not lost on me during this debate. I believe in low taxation, responsible spending, and ensuring every pound is used wisely. Yet too much of our budget is swallowed up by consultants, quangos, box-ticking exercises, money that should be spent on our frontline services and real investment in our communities. Taking embedding Huntingdonshire futures, this is a leadership task. It's not an additional budgetary need. Strong leadership comes from within, not from throwing more money at initiatives that should already be our core responsibilities. And then there's digital communications, and let's talk Huntingdonshire. Before we pour more money into this, let's scrutinise and understand our existing communication strategy. How do we know what money we need to spend and what the solutions are if we haven't properly assessed what we already have? Our climate change strategy. Lara is knowledgeable, very capable, and along with other members doing a fantastic job. But why does she need, or we need, support to do something we already know? This is exactly the kind of wasteful spending that the public rightly questions. Then there's a place strategy. Significant sums have already been spent developing and implementing it. Why are we now being asked to spend even more on a strategy that's supposedly complete? And finally, the local plan. Cabinet only a couple of weeks ago said it was should be completed by December 26. So why are we budgeting for consultants beyond this when their service will no longer be required? Questions that I've been asked. I would love to freeze council tax and focus on smarter spending and economic growth, but this Labour government is forcing councils to tax to the maximum. An ultimatum of an increased council tax or face funding cuts. That's not financial management, it's financial blackmail, and it's families, pensioners and small business who will suffer the result of this. At a time when pensioners are struggling to afford heating and food, how can we justify taking more money from them? Instead of addressing the cost of living crisis, this government is passing the buck back to local councils, and I won't be part of it. There is another way. Instead of more taxation, we should be driving economic growth, boosting our market towns by making them more accessible, not less. Many here promised to reduce parking fees during their election campaigns. Introducing a free first-hour parking scheme would bring in footfall support to traders and revive our high street. Holding firm against the trader pitch fee increases would also make a very small difference. For you, it may not be much, but for them, it's a great deal. Rather than taking more from residents, we should be prioritising effectiveness, efficiencies, frontline services, and making our district a place where business, communities, and families can thrive. For these reasons, I won't be supporting the budget that's been presented tonight, unless, of course, we amend it with this amendment, which is fair and reasonable, a good compromise that acknowledges the challenging times we face. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. I do enjoy these evenings. There are 12 people watching us online, by the way, so I just thought I'd let you know, Councillor Mickelberg, your training of the people of Huntingdonshire is getting to some of them anyway. So, as I said, I have really enjoyed listening to the various contributions around the chamber this evening. I'd like to make 3 points. I've heard several people going on about slashing and burning things. You can't slash and burn something that doesn't exist. All of these things are proposals that don't exist today and are proposals that we will spend this money in the next year ahead. So there's no slashing and burning going on here. This is about pausing on some of the developments that are proposed in the budget that we shall come back to. I hope we won't come back to it, but we might possibly come back to it later on. Lovely to get name checked in the debate so far. I'll try to see if I can get another one later on. On the environmental side of things, I don't personally think that we should be inventing a new team to go out and grime bust the district. I did stand up last year passionately, and I have done, as those of you who have been on this authority for many years know, frequently moaned and complained about the state of this district. But actually, what I've complained about really is the state of our highways, particularly the responsibility of national highways, which this isn't going to be dealing with national highways. This is the impression that people get of our district as they drive in on the A14, as they drive in, actually the new part of the A1, which is under contract, is almost spotless. The rest of it is terrible. It's not actually about our market towns at all. It's about a wider area. And I would say, yeah, we could go out and employ a team to grot bust and everything else. But actually, I think there's 188,000 people who live in this district who've got a responsibility to keep it clean. We all have a responsibility to keep this district clean. We all have a responsibility to teach those people who chuck stuff out of the window not to do that. And that's where I think we should be investing our time and energy. And I am sort of amused, Councillor Bywater sort of referred to it, but let me refer to it as well, that, you know, I've heard when I was sitting on that side of the chamber, many people, some of whom are sitting on this side of the chamber now, pushing and writing very passionate things in their election leaflets about free parking and how important it was and the death of the town centre, and we're doomed, we're not going to make it if we don't have free parking. And here is an option in front of you that basically says, don't spend a whole load of things that we're not currently spending money on. It will free up an opportunity for free car parking. And I would say to you that when I look at social media, that's where I see people's priorities. People are constantly grumbling about the state of their town centres in terms of the economic activity going on there and the fact that they don't go there because it's too expensive. And you guys know that because you campaign in the towns more than I campaign in the towns. I'll finish by saying that the young people that I know, where I live, don't come to our market towns. They go to Rushton Lakes. And they go to Rushton Lakes because it's free to park there. and everything that they want is there. And where is the vision that we have to make our town centres like that again? Delighted to hear that a strategy is going to be forthcoming. Maybe it's been galvanised by this motion that's in front of us this evening. Because frankly, I'm still waiting for other strategies, 2.5, nearly 3 years into this administration, that are yet to appear. But if this is what it takes to get a new car parking strategy that focuses on our town centres and how we get more people into them, I'm absolutely delighted that we've put it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. In the absence of anybody else wishing to speak, I will move to Councillor Jennings, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I too would like to thank the Chief Executive, the Section 151 officer and the Head of Finance and her team for the considerable time that they gave us in going through the nitty-gritty of both the administration's budget proposals and working through the amendment figures that you have before you now. Earlier today, I counted 14 or 15 shops, eating places and banks on St Neots High Street that have disappeared over the past 3 years. Now, I don't seem to blame the joint administration for that, well, not totally. And some of those units have been replaced by amazing new businesses, but many of them still remain empty. And St Neots is not alone, either within the district or the wider country at large. And we shouldn't just say that's acceptable because that's the way it's happening elsewhere and it's the way of the world now. Because that feels like a phrase that Councillor Ferguson uses a lot, which is a managed decline, and we shouldn't be managing the decline. We could actually try and do something about it. And as a district, we do have the power to do something. So why don't we encourage those who just have to pop to the chemist or the post office or the building society to not cause congestion by parking up in loading bays or disabled spaces or on double yellow lines. Instead, with the surety of an hour's free parking, they might then also have a coffee or browse in a charity shop or impulse buy at the market or on the high street. We already have a limited number of on-street parking that is free for an hour. So we're simply seeking to bring the council's short-stay car parks in line with that on-street parking. And with CPE enforcement on the way, there'll be no excuses for law breaking. So let's show our support for the market traders and businesses in our towns. And I know that Councillor Taylor wants it. She said in her election addresses in the past, and she said in this chamber too, that she still wanted it, but we couldn't afford it. And we hadn't got the finances to allow it. But this amendment shows that there is a path to allow those finances, to allow the free parking that Councillor Taylor has, I believe the words, always wanted. Councillor Simone Taylor, if there's a confusion. I'd like to just address a couple of points that were made by councillors in the administration during the debate. And specifically, I think the points that Councillor Wakeford and Councillor Hassel made about bringing opposition proposals through scrutiny. The issue I think that we have about bringing stuff through scrutiny is the first time we see the budget proposals is in the papers for the scrutiny panel, the only scrutiny panel that we've had before this meeting. Now, if Councillor Wakeford is suggesting that maybe we should be more involved in the budget setting process far earlier than the final papers come to scrutiny, then I think that's something we can perhaps talk about. And if you're talking about having more notice of amendments that are made to motions, whether they're budget motions or anything else, then maybe we should get involved in the constitutional working group and suggest the changes to the constitution, because we are working within the bounds of the constitution that's in front of us. Councillor Hunt said he didn't have the time to look at the amendment. He seemed to have a very good prepared speech, though, which was quite amusing. And Councillor Mittelberg.
Personal explanation, I didn't say that. It was Councillor Ferguson who said he didn't have the chance to read that. I did spend some time looking at this earlier today. So I would ask for that statement to be withdrawn.
Chair, I'm happy to withdraw that.
Thank you.
My handwriting is getting a little bit. And Councillor Mickelberg, in his excellent budget presentation, pointed out that the contribution to reserves was expected to be the general reserve was expected to be 1.4 million this year in last year's budget, but it dropped to 0 in this budget year. But this proposal will actually have the effect of being able to put almost half of that back into general reserves in the budget year. So I think you have a choice. You can choose the market traders over vanity projects. You could choose putting money back into our high street businesses over money in consultants' back pockets. And you could choose listening to residents over listening to lobbyists. I urge you to support the amendment, particularly those of you that have long histories in being vociferous about supporting free parking in our market towns. And with that, I second the proposal.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ross Martin, did you want to speak, please? Right, okay, thank you very much. In that case... Yeah. In that case, we will now go to the vote. For those in favour... Sorry? Okay, in that case, we will need to take a vote on whether you would like a recorded vote. So, okay.
So if I may clarify that, because the substantive motion is the motion on which the recorded vote lawfully, on which a recorded vote is lawfully required, if there is a request for a recorded vote on the amendment, we then go to the normal constitutional process of requiring a proposer, a seconder, and then I'm going to look to Tom. I think it's a third. Is it Tom of the council? Present. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request a recorded vote.
Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Jennings. Sorry, all those in favour of a recorded vote, please raise your hands. Thank you very much. Okay. That is carried. Thank you. We will have a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, members. If you could indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining for the amendment in front of you. And I'll read out the names. Alban. For. Banks. Against. Butell. For. Blackwell. Against. Brereton. For. Burke. Against. Bywater. For. Catmer. Against. Corley. For. Chapman. Clark. For. Comboy. Against. Corney. For. Costello. For. Dew.
Against.
Ferguson.
Abstain.
Gledo. Against. Gray. For. Golson. For. Harvey. Hassel. Against. Howell. Against. Hunt. Against. Jennings. For. Jordan. Against. Marion Cadware. Against. Patrick Cadware. Against. Keane. For. Kerr. Against. Lowe. For. Martin. For. McAdam.
Against.
Brett Mickelrow. Against. Debbie Mickelrow. Against. Mockball. Against. Niche. For. Pickering. Against. Pitt. Against. Sanderson. Against. Shaw. Against. Ian Taylor. Against. Simon Taylor. Against. Terry. Against. Tevlin.
Against.
Wakeford, and Wells.
Against.
So I have 15 voting for the amendment, 30 against the amendment, and 1 abstention. That means the amendment's fallen.
Thank you. That means we now return to the original substantive motion. So I'm opening up to the floor again. Who would like to speak? Councillor Ross Martin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, back to the Joint Administration's budget for this year. And although the Executive Council of Finance didn't mention it, it looks like the black hole is back. Back with a vengeance, because it wasn't so big last year. And despite all the lectures, the finger wagging, the grandstanding from the Joint Administration over the last couple of years, and the biblical readings from Councillor Mickleborough himself, they claimed for the last couple of years that they would fix it, but their budget leaves £6.5 million gap. This is calculated using the way that they lambasted us for the last 2 and a bit years. They plan to raid the CIS reserves, the very thing only 12 months ago they called reckless. This black hole exists after the biggest service cut in this council's history, the extra £2.5 million raise from green bin tax, which they said would fix the funding gap, and an interest windfall that has nearly doubled their expectations. Yet here we are, same problem. They want to tax and spend. I hope Rachel from Accounts isn't watching this, because they'll be shocked to see a joint administration with 4 Labour councillors happily passing a budget with a massive financial hole. But don't worry, she'll be too busy in number 11, figuring out how she can rewrite her CV to say that she's Prime Minister and not Chancellor. This is a budget of hypocrisy. For a council that has underspent by £2 million this year, or an estimated £2 million this year, 1.6 million last year, and 642,000 the year before, you'd think they'd get their numbers right. And where's the Lib Dem bar chart this year? You know, the one last year that they showed to say why their budget was needed, and they needed to charge for green waste. Well, not even their creativity could make this MTFS look good. Because again, they are planning on raiding the council's reserves. Have they given up? Last year, they attacked our amendment for supposedly burning through reserves. Now they're doing exactly the same thing. They have failed on their own principles. The truth is simple. If this budget had come from us, from this side of the chamber, they would be tearing it to shreds. But because it's theirs, they'll defend it to the end. Let's be clear, we on this side would not be proposing a tax and spend budget such as this. We are seeing the damage Labour's policies on their tax and spend agenda, punishing residents here in this budget as well. For years, we've been calling for, within local government, for fairer and more certain funding. Some on that side had hoped the new Labour government would deliver. They haven't. They've failed to cover the cost for their own jobs tax. They've frozen our government grant, and they are planning to punish any council that doesn't raise council tax. That is why we didn't propose a council tax freeze, even though we could have afforded it through smart savings. But Labour would have punished us. Labour's policy is more Groucho Marx than it is Carl. Tell us the magic word and we'll give you some money. In this case, the magic words are tax and spend. Despite the way the Joint Administration has set out their budget, the Council is in a comfortable financial situation because for the 3rd year in a row, they've been very conservative with their figures. But it feels like some of these decisions are just to squeeze more and more from our residents. They are lowballing income forecasts, overinflating predicted expenditure. Their assumptions on council tax-based growth doesn't align with the government's 50% increase in house building targets. A simple rebasing could bring an extra £500,000 across the MTFS. They're doing the same tricks with interest rates. They're being overly cautious so they can sit on the extra cash when it comes in and they can pretend they've saved it later or spend it on their pet projects. If they got their sums right from the start, they could ease the tax burden, cut parking charges and stop penny pinching residents. What isn't very conservative is the 11% increase in the revenue budget. If you include the 1.666 million reallocation of the underspend given to us in Q2. That 11% equates to spending just short of £3 million more than we would have spent this year. Where on earth is this being spent? The budget is full of holes, overestimated spending, underestimated income, and executive councillors who don't even know their own budgets. That was made clear at the last ONS and Cabinet meeting when they floundered under questioning. The Joint Administration wants to take more and more from residents and spend it on their own vanity projects. This budget is full of broken promises and I will not be voting for it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Joe Harvey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Accountants and budgets have a reputation for being boring, for not having any glitz or glamour. However, being boring is a good thing when we are talking about finance. Budgets that get the headlines are those that are less boring, the budgets that have huge deficits, and we're fortunate to have a balanced budget here before us tonight. Our risks at HDC this year have been significant. We have had a change in our national government. Interest rates have continued to stay higher than expected. Inflation is still higher than the target of 2%. The cost of living crisis is still affecting our residents, and now we have local government reorganisation to factor in too. Despite these risks, we are presenting a balanced budget at a time when many councils are struggling to do so. I'm proud of the Joint Administration for taking the tough decisions needed to make this possible, while still supporting our most vulnerable residents. It might be boring, but it represents security for our residents, allows us to keep providing the services that they value. For that reason, I support this budget, and I hope that you will too.
Thank you. Councillor Conboy.
Thank you, Chair. I will actually manage to stand.
Don't stand if you don't.
I'll try.
Okay, thank you.
New knees. So you have before you a budget this evening which recognises the journey that we've come on in the last 2 years since we took over the administration. Despite the protests, and I have a child who's doing Shakespeare at the moment, I feel the lady does protest too much, we had an inherited budget deficit of £8 million with no published plan to deal with that. And can I ask for some respect, please, because we haven't catcalled and chatted throughout your presentation. Please don't do it through mine. We took difficult but prudent decisions to resolve that shortfall. We have been very clear for the last 2 years that we have jeopardy in the MTFS, and so has the various 151 officers who've presented their reports. That is nothing new. That's the inherited jeopardy. We were able to close the 8 million gap. We continue to work hard to close the ongoing gap we've inherited in the MTFS. The challenges we face is that we're not out of the woods, and as you've already heard from Councillor Mickleborough, there are a number of factors over which we do not have certainty. So therefore, we have to remain prudent and set a balanced budget. Turning to the amendment, we've debated it at some length. You will know that Councillor Blackwell raised car parking at the Overview and Scrutiny panel when it met. If you've been working on this for a number of weeks, and you were thinking of bringing free car parking forward, it is a shame that you sat through that panel and didn't contribute. Nor did you explain that you were thinking equally about the parking. And you will have known at that panel, it was already confirmed that we would be looking at a car parking strategy to replace the one we've inherited, which is no longer fit for purpose. You will also know, had you watched the Cabinet meeting, that Councillor Taylor confirmed that we would be seeking to create a new parking strategy, and it would be coming through pre-scrutiny to allow every single member of this council to participate and shape that strategy. You are correct. A number of us would like to see the option of free car parking, but we need to look at it based on data. We need to understand the impact that it will have on all of our car parks. And we need to understand how we can best structure a strategy that supports the high street, including where people park and then spend their money. And that might not be our short-term car parks. We need a holistic approach that looks root and branch at the opportunities ahead of us. And that's what we proposed. That's already come through council. We have already agreed that that's something we will be doing, and you've heard that again this evening. It is not something we are doing on the basis of an amendment, which was shared with us 6 hours ago. It is something we had already committed publicly that we would do. So tonight you have before you a balanced budget. Despite the opposition's protests otherwise, we have stayed true to this council's agreed budget principles, and we do continue to demonstrate that we are delivering for our residents. I didn't speak in the last amendments about the place strategy or the communications, but I will abuse my opportunity to do so now by being very clear. The place strategy is one of the very few extensively co-produced strategies that has ever been produced by this administration or its predecessors across Huntingdonshire District Council's history. It was by the residents, for our businesses, and spoke to their wishes and their desires of what they wanted to see over the next 20 to 30 years. Embedding the place strategy in our day-to-day work is a short-term investment to actually make a long-term saving. And if you'd looked at that forecast, you would know that. It is important that we stay focused and laser focused on what we promised our residents we would try to achieve. That's more important now than it's ever been because we have local government reorganisation, and our legacy to the future of Huntingdonshire is the work that we can deliver now that will withstand as we go into whatever new unitary combination comes next. The communications aspect is vital. Many of you complained about the challenges of using our current website platform. We want to develop it. We want it to work differently and better. But we also had a peer review, and our Conservative lead peer review was very clear as a reviewer that we did not communicate enough about this council's successes. Our digital communications is an effective way of doing that. And that's what we're looking at investing in. That's your successes. It's not mine. It's not my political group's successes. It's this council's successes. So by supporting tonight's budget, it may be boring. I'm rather proud it's boring. But by voting for it tonight, you allow us to remain laser focused on delivering this council's corporate plan for its residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move to the vote, could I ask Councillor Micklebauer to sum up, please? Oh, I'm sorry, it just appears that Councillor Gray would like to speak first. Sorry, Councillor Micklebauer. Thank you.
You almost sound disappointed there, Chair. They will be delighted to know there are now 15 people watching us online. So, word is getting out there that it's lively down at Pathfinder House this evening. So, I mean, I have to intervene, I'm afraid, Chair. The leader of the council has provoked me with the comment about no plans, black holes, all this kind of thing. It's utter nonsense. utter nonsense, because 12 months later, after a new Section 151 officer came in post and reviewed the contributions from business rates, there was no black hole. And then nothing that the Joint Administration did in the course of that year made any difference whatsoever to that number. That number was entirely the creation of a revaluation of business rates. And you, leader, challenged me in my very last performance, I seem to remember in the Burgess Hall, saying that there wasn't a plan, it was completely unfunded, we were just rumbling around, nothing was going to happen, it was a disaster. And my response to you, which I will repeat again, and I've said several times in this chamber, was local government finance is a very strange thing. It's very often unusual how quickly things move. And 12 months later, there was no black hole. So anyway, just correcting that little minor issue there, I would really say that I support what my group leader has said here this evening, which is basically expenditure is running out of control here in comparison to the amount of money that's coming in through the front door. We know that the national insurance, we already heard from Councillor Mickelberg that the national insurance disastrous tax, frankly, that has been imposed on businesses up and down this land is having a dramatic effect here at the District Council. And, we just need to accept that that's just one of many of the things that are piling through. We can see inflation is rising again, and we know that wages and wage inflation will also be a pressure that's coming and is remaining remarkably stubborn to deal with. And so consequently, I don't think that this is a boring budget, because you've got a long list of things that you're proposing to spend this year that you're not currently spending. And that long list of things all adds up to quite a lot of money, as we've already heard in the previous debate here this evening. None of that's boring. I accept it's exciting, and I accept that there's lots of good things that will be done out the back of it. The question mark hanging over it all is, can we afford it? And I don't believe that now is the time to be doing all of those things. So for that reason, I will not be voting for this budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm now going to move to Councillor Mickelbauer to sum up before we take the vote. Thank you.
I must have imagined my first 6 months in this council, because I'm pretty sure we sat down repeatedly looking at the financial documents and going, rude word. And I'm pretty sure that my first budget didn't have a black hole because we put charging for garden waste subscription into it.
Didn't. Not in that one.
So, because I inherited my first budget. The elections were after the budget came through. I also can't work out why people can't add 6.5 million and 8 million quid together and realise we're in a 14.5 million quid black hole if we hadn't made those changes. I don't understand the biggest service cut that has been mentioned, but in context of we can't afford to do other things, I do understand it, because again, it's just, I guess it's just an interpretation on things. The budget is boring. The budget is solid. There is uncertainty within it, undoubtedly. I agree completely with the comment from the floor that local government finances are a strange and weird thing. But we are in a position to ride through the vast majority of things that could reasonably be expected. We have a budget with items that we are not committing long-term spending to. The vast majority of the budget bids are shorter-term items with a defined lifespan that will cease, and will do so in an orderly fashion if we find that finances become tighter still. So I look at it and I say to myself, if I'm one of the 187,983 who are not watching our YouTube channel at the moment. I'd say good, actually, happy with that. Nice detailed budget for the year ahead. Things are looking fine. There's a fiver which on my council tax from the district council, which is below inflation, and I can accept an extra fiver because HDC are delivering, the officers are doing a cracking job, and things are getting better for our residents. So on that basis, I recommend the budget.
Thank you. We will now move to the recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, members. If I'll read out your names in order, and can you indicate, please, whether you're voting for, against, or abstaining the main budget? Councillor Alban.
Against.
Councillor Banks.
For.
Councillor Boutel.
Against.
Councillor Blackwell.
For.
Councillor Brereton.
Against.
Councillor Burke. Councillor Bywater.
Against.
Councillor Catmer.
For.
Councillor Corley.
Against.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Clark.
Against.
Councillor Conboy.
For.
Councillor Corney.
Against.
Councillor Costello. Councillor Dew.
For.
Councillor Ferguson.
For.
Councillor Gledo. For. Councillor Gray. Councillor Golson. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Hassel. Councillor Howell. Councillor Hunt. Councillor Jennings.
Against.
Councillor Jordan. Councillor Marion Cadware. Councillor Patrick Cadware. Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Kerr. Councillor Lowe. Councillor Martin.
Against.
Councillor McAdam.
For.
Councillor Brett Mickleborough. Councillor Debbie Mickleborough. Councillor Mockball. Councillor Niche. Councillor Pickering. Councillor Pitt. Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Shaw. Councillor Ian Taylor. Councillor Simon Taylor. Councillor Terry. Councillor Tevlin.
For.
Councillor Wakeford. And Councillor Wells. And that's 31 voting for the budget proposal in front of you and 15 against and no abstentions. So that's carried.
Fellow councillors, I'm now tabling a short adjournment for a comfort break. Yeah, could we all be back here by 9:05, please, in our seats? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're now moving to item number 7, the Pay Policy Statement 25-26. All right. Turning the Pay Policy Statement, an updated version of this report has been published since the original agenda publication. Please refer to this document. This is a statutory requirement for the Council to approve this statement by the 31st of March 2025. Councillor Convoy, is there anything else you wish to add before moving the recommendation contained within the report? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So you will have spotted that I'm not Councillor Davenport-Ray, and I think she's been watching because some of us have received WhatsApp messages. What you won't realise is the comments about using consultants and Councillor Davenport-Ray's excellent expertise was somewhat ironic because she's been stranded in Germany for a week, extremely unwell in hospital, and is flying home this evening. So we're very pleased that she is at least being able to follow to tonight's debate. Councillor Davenport-Ray, if you're watching, I apologise. I'm not going to do this justice in the way that you would, but you have before you tonight the recommendation, which is to approve. The Employment Committee have met and have unanimously agreed the pay policy. So I'm really pleased to put it before you tonight on Councillor Davenport-Ray's behalf. Thank you, Chair. I think I officially need to propose it.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you to Councillor Wakeford. I'll now open it up for discussion. Thank you. Nobody wishing to speak? Thank you. In that case, I will move to a vote by show of hands. All those in favour, please raise their hands. Thank you. That's unanimous. That appears to be unanimous, so it's clearly taken. Thank you. It's succeeded. Next item, item number 8, questions to members of the Cabinet. We're now moving to the point where councillors may ask questions to members of the Cabinet. Before we start this item, may I remind you all that all questions must be relevant to matters for which the council has powers or duties, must not relate to an item which is included elsewhere on the council agenda, since they can be raised at that point in the meeting, should be limited to obtaining information or pressing for action, must not divulge or require to be divulged confidential or exempt information, and must not exceed 2 minutes in duration. I would also like to remind you that if you would like to take the opportunity to ask a supplementary question, can we please ensure that these are raised through the chair and not directed directly to the Executive Councillor? Thank you. Could members also keep their questions and answers brief or succinct to allow the full participation of all members? Thank you. We have 30 minutes for this item. Thank you. So, who wants to speak first? Thank you. Councillor Simon Bywater, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question's to Councillor Simon Taylor as a portfolio holder for waste. I appreciate that HDC is not responsible for household recycling centres, as it's a role focused on waste. Our council's roles focus on waste collection and fly tipping clearance. However, residents in my ward, Councillor Albon's ward, Councillor Golson's ward and Councillor Marge Butel's ward in the north part of the district are being impacted by Peterborough City Council's decision to impose on residents only permit parking at the Fengate Household Recycling Centre. This is particularly concerning as Alconbury no longer accepts paint, tins and items of that nature, leaving residents in the north part of the county with pretty much no disposable options for that. And I say that when I went past Alconbury Tip a few weeks ago, there was a nice pile of paint pots next to the bus stop. Can you, as a portfolio holder, confirm whether Peterborough City Council consulted with HTC about the potential impacts of this decision? And additionally, has Has HD been offered any option for our residents to potentially pay or access Fengate Recycling Centre?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bywater. I am not aware. This is something that I will have to get a written response to you for. As you have stated, household recycling centres are not our remit and they are county remit. But I can find out to see whether we have, Huntingdonshire District Council, had any type of consultation with Peterborough City. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jonathan Gray.
Could I have a supplementary?
Yeah, would you ask?
Yeah, so very quickly, thank you.
Thank you.
Would the portfolio holder agree to arrange a meeting with your opposite number at Peterborough City Council, maybe the County Council, to explore possible opportunities and solutions to this problem? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, there's no reason why we shouldn't. And also, don't forget that we have a RECAP partnership, which involves County Council and Peterborough City, as well as all the other districts and Cambridge City. So it's worth exploring the option. Thank you.
Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to return to an old chestnut, and I'd like to ask Councillor Simone Taylor about the green bin tax and the monitoring thereof. Last October, I asked a question about why this was not coming through the democratic process. Councillor Ferguson helpfully pointed out to me that there are a couple of options for me to look at parts of the performance on the performance tables, which is true. But when this was first introduced, we were told that we were going to be getting quarterly updates, and we have not had any quarterly updates. And I am still looking. That was in October. I scoured. November would have been a bit unfair to scour the scrutiny process. Didn't see anything, but wasn't expecting to. Nothing in December. Just January's meeting was cancelled. Nothing in February. So here we are, nearly a year into it, and I don't think we've actually had laid before this council for democratic scrutiny a complete assessment of the impact of the decision to charge for green bins. So will she undertake that she will bring that through the scrutiny process and do that within the next 2 months?
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I will go back to officers and look at that. I'm just trying to understand at what part of do you need to scrutinise of the green bins, or what performance rating? Is it the actual collection of the bins? I'm just trying to understand what you would like to see from that. Thank you, Chair.
Well, one of my fellow councillors is helpfully shouting all of it in my ear. But what I think is important is, how many people we've already heard from Councillor Mickelberg that more people than was expected have signed up. So how many people have signed up? How many bins are issued? How many people have got 1 bin, 2 bins, 3 bins, or whatever? But I also think we need to look at what the impact, the tonnage that was collected. And I think we also need to be looking at what the impact on our grey waste has been. Because previous to that, none of this was going into that particular waste stream. So I think, it's not for me to say what it should be like, but if I was on that panel, I'd be thinking, that's the kind of thing I would be wanting to look at past data before it came in, and then the data through out the other side, and to see what the trends were. We know we're raising more money than we thought we were going to raise. Maybe that's a good thing. I personally think it's a bad thing because, it's a reduction in service for most people. But what's the impact on landfill? So I think I would like you and your officers to go away and think about it in a holistic sense, to say we've introduced this charge. What's the ramification of it across all of the waste streams that we've got in this district? And what lessons can we learn? Should we learn? What can Councillor Mickelberg forecast out of that, for example? So it's pretty comprehensive, but I'll leave it to the portfolio holder and her officers to work out what it ought to look like. But I really think, having made such a big decision, that this council should be looking at it in detail 1 year after implementation.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's something that, well, I'm presuming it's something that you would like to take through overview and scrutiny, or would you like that to come to full council? Because personally, I think overview scrutiny are the ones to decide this. You know, as we heard the previous motion, the opposition said that overview and scrutiny are the ones to decide their destiny and what they would like to look at. But, you know, stand corrected. If full council wants to see that data, fine. If not, I think the more appropriate place would be overview and scrutiny. And also, I just would like to correct you that food waste, 36% used to, before green bins were collected, 36% used to go through grey bins.
Councillor Gorson.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Ferguson. Having heard Peterborough was mentioned in Parliament regarding grooming gangs and child sexual exploitation, CSE, and my ward, Yaxley and Facet, is bordering Peterborough, I decided to have a look and see what policies HDC has in place for signposting, reporting, etc. for officers and even members of the public. A search on the HDC site for grooming gangs brought up nothing. However, a search for CSE brings up the Community Strategic Assessment, Safety Assessment for Huntingdonshire. Within this document, it highlights Huntingdonshire as having the largest proportion of CSE crimes in Cambridgeshire. It also states that raising the awareness of signs and how to report locally would not only help engagement, but improve intelligence gathering. The report comes with various recommendations to improve our position. I did a further search on Google, and that highlighted previous policies that we had in place. But they're also, on the 23rd of April 23, Cabinet approved adoption of a national policy, the Safeguarding Children, Young People and Adults at Risk of Harm. But this does not come up on our online system. Why? And following the claim that young children in Huntingdonshire are reported to have the highest number of child sexual exploitation cases, should we at least have follow-up on the recommendations? Have we implemented any of these recommendations? If not, why not?
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Councillor Golson, for an excellent question on something which is really important. I'll get to the substantive answer to this at the end of this, but I want to talk a bit about what we do to fight the heinous crime, which is child sexual exploitation or grooming. Like Councillor Bywater, I served for a number of years on the Police and Crime Panel, and I can tell you that child sexual exploitation is a key objective for our Police and Crime Commissioner, Daryl Preston. And the way he exerts that influence is through community safety partnerships, which are convened by district councils to formulate and implement strategies to tackle crime, disorder and antisocial behaviour. Community safety partnerships bring together police, fire and rescue services, local authorities, health partners and probation services, with the principle that no single agency can address all of the drivers of crime, especially in complex, hard to detect crimes such as child sexual exploitation or grooming. Now, when I first took over this portfolio 3 years ago, I was shocked to find that HDC was the only district in Cambridgeshire Constabulary region not to have a community safety partnership. So one of my first actions was to ask for the community safety partnership to be reconvened, precisely so we can tackle problems such as child sexual exploitation and grooming, the prevention of which is now an explicit strategic priority for the Huntingdonshire CSP. And because of this, a multi-agency working group meets monthly to discuss and address issues involving children and young people at risk. And a consequence of that is that recently, late last year, HDC officers played a key role in shutting down a cafe called Desert Central in Huntingdon after allegations of child sexual exploitation. But the substantive point you make is that when you Googled it, you couldn't find this on the website, and I agree that's not good enough. We did indeed review our safeguarding policy in April 2023. The commitment in the paperwork is that we would share it on Huntingdonshire's safeguarding SharePoint site and communicate it direct to community safeguarding officers, which has been done, but it's not good enough, but you can't see it on the website. So I will commit to reviewing the district council web pages so that they specifically refer to child sexual exploitation and grooming within our community safety pages. And as part of that, we will describe what child sexual exploitation and grooming is, how to spot the signs of it for parents and carers, and how parents, carers or other people can make referrals if they suspect it's going on. And we'll also try and list the training opportunities that are available for voluntary and community sectors. I agree this is an important thing, and I'm sorry that we haven't done it, but we will make that right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Charlotte Lowe.
Thank you. My question is to Councillor Sanderson. Both Councillor Costello and I have contacted you to discuss the issues Warboys Parish Council are having with the build of their new community centre and failed SIL bids. They have a very passionate and hard-working clerk who is project managing the build, and costs are escalating. They have engaged with officers prior to applying for the SIL funding, so were understandably frustrated when that was refused. Could you please commit to a meeting with Councillor Costello and I, along with the senior clerk, to discuss a way forward, as I don't think it would be financially sound for them to take out another public loan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe, for the question. Yes, more than happy to meet with yourself and Councillor Costello and Julie Drummond, your parish clerk. I'm sorry to see that you've had some problems. More than happy to assist in any way I can. Thank you.
Could I ask, can we set a date tonight, so to speak? I know. Because, it is time sensitive because they're trying to get this finished over the line.
Yes. Yeah, a serious point. Yes. Let's chat after the meeting and see if we can set up a time to do this. Absolutely. Thank you.
Councillor Julie Kerr.
Through you, Ted. This is through to Councillor Taylor. Can you give me any figures of tree planting and bulb planting throughout the district this year, and how successful it's been?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. So I had a meeting with our ARB manager, George, and we have, it's quite exciting actually how much work the team's done. And considering the team in ARB is George, obviously he's had some help, but he has done amazing. So we've done 5,000 more trees have been planted, which have now completed the target of the 10,000 by 2025. Across the district, for example, this isn't exhaustive. There's lots of other things these are just examples. Priory Park, St Neots, rejuvenisation of the wood adjacent to the Huntingdon Road. Hill Rise, St Ives. Unfortunately, there was 340 mature elms had to be cut down because of disease. However, 2,000 of the trees have been replanted, not just elms, but different types. Sapley playing fields, replanting of the whips that got vandalised, which now double the size. They were planted slightly bigger, so they weren't going to get vandalised. Fences to hedges. This is a new concept that you may have seen happening around the district. A lot of our fences come down, they have to be maintained. It is a high cost to maintain them. So the thought process is moving our fences to hedges, 700 beech trees planted in the Carnegie Park at St Neots. Obviously, the fences will stay until they fall down. The hedges will establish. It also creates a corridor for wildlife and stepping stones for the wildlife as well. Also, Huntingdon Riverside Park hedges are now complete. The whole hedge thing is massive for the biodiversity, and the ground maintenance team have been really busy planting 90,000. This is just amazing. 90,000 bulbs planted throughout the district. So I would like to thank all of the ground maintenance and the ARB team for really getting the district looking great which is going to be great for biodiversity and our residents and our planet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for the Executive Councillor for Economy, Regeneration and Housing. So over the past few years, myself and Councillor Harvey have helped residents in poorly maintained social housing, including mould, damp and maintenance issues. There's also been a specific case highlighted in the local press by my colleague Ian Solomon involving a Places for People property in St Neots, which has been infested with black mould and damp for over 4 years. And the photos are shocking, and I would recommend members take a look at those. Unfortunately, as I hear from residents in mine and Joe's ward and on doorsteps across Huntingdonshire, this isn't a unique case with some housing association properties in the region. As ward councillors, we help as much as we can, but it seems like some housing associations need to get their act together. As such, can I ask the portfolio holder that whilst HDC doesn't own or operate any social housing, what is HDC doing to put pressure on housing associations to ensure that their properties are maintained and fit for people to live in? Thank you.
Thank you. Who are we talking here? Yep. Councillor Wakeford, thank you.
Thank you. So we engage frequently with our registered provider or housing association partners. We have regular meetings with them at a variety of levels of seniority in relation to the maintenance of their properties, including Places for People, who are the provider who managed the stock that was owned by this council until it was transferred away by a previous administration, I think nearly 25 years ago. Repair issues in both the private rented and social housing sectors should initially be reported to the relevant landlord or housing association, but where this doesn't resolve things, it can be reported to Environmental Health Team at the council. When the council does receive a complaint regarding repairs in housing association properties, our initial involvement will be to check the association is taking appropriate steps and within a reasonable timescale, to understand whether they are undertaking their repairing responsibilities properly. If we don't feel they're dealing with them properly, then we have a full range of enforcement options available, exactly the same approaches as would be taken with a private landlord. Our options are clearly more limited than if we retained our own stock, but as Councillor Hunt alluded to, and as members across the chamber will be familiar, we can have a significant positive impact assisting residents through casework in representing their needs directly to housing associations. So I'd certainly commend and encourage members to continue doing that. But as I say, we work with them more strategically to up their game as well.
Councillor Claire Tevlin, please.
Thanks, Chair. This is for Councillor Sanderson. Could we please get an update of planning application stats, and also any information regarding now that, so this is really echoey, now that we're in tilted balance and the local plan, any updates on this? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair, for the question from Councillor Tevlin. So stats are doing very well. Again, we're more than holding our own. So our major applications year to date, just under 91% of those were processed in time. That's slightly above our target. Minors, we're very slightly below target, but still doing extremely well. And householders, our variance slightly down on previously, but very close to our target. We're obviously keen to stick as close to that as possible, if not exceed it. I think the second part of your question was regarding the local plan. Is that correct? And
yes, so the impact of tilted balance and also the local plan, just an update, thanks.
Well, on tilted balance, obviously, we actually exceeded our housing targets quite substantially. 2 years in a row, we're actually 164% ahead of our targets, under the last administration as well as this one, I might add. And our record of house building is extremely good. What's happened now is that we've fallen below that 5-year land supply, so tilted balance applies. Members have gone through the training session on our Development Management Committee. It doesn't mean that we have to always approve applications if we have a robust reason not to, Obviously, it does make it a little bit difficult, but we recognise the reasons because of the government's increased housing targets. Local plan, we had the local development scheme, revised edition of that went to scrutiny. Went to cabinet quite recently. Unfortunately, there wasn't time to take it to scrutiny because we had to get it back to central government by the 6th of March. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Taylor, please.
Thank you. This is a question to Councillor Sally Howell. As you guys on the left-hand side of the chamber, on the left, sorry, are quite aware, because you read our leaflets with considerable interest, community access defibrillators are quite a passion of mine. So I've just lost the question. I've been trying to have community access defibrillators installed onto 2 assets owned by this council in Amesbury for 2 years. It's proven to be a somewhat complicated matter. In the time it has taken so far, I have managed to facilitate 2 other community access defibrillators to be placed in my ward, one on a privately owned nursery and one at a GP surgery. So it can be done quickly. These pieces of equipment are life-saving pieces of equipment. Only this week, I attended a cardiac arrest as a Good Sam app, and on which one of these defibrillators could have been used. Sadly, this person died. I am asking if this council can make a policy whereby community access defibrillators can be placed on our assets, if requested, in a more timely manner, so we can speed up the process from request to installation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. We do actually have a policy in place for defibrillators on buildings we actually own and operate, such as the One Loser sites and our countryside services like Hinchinbrook. It's part of our safety policy. For request ones on buildings such as the one at Priory Park Pavilion that we own but don't operate, in St Neots are dealt with on a case-by-case request basis. That one was actually funded by the football club there. I think the ones that you're talking about in St Neots at the moment are on buildings where we have tenants in them, which makes it a little bit more complex. But on the 2 currently ongoing that you mentioned, we are currently awaiting a response from the town council, who I understand are funding them. So that's the delay there.
Thank you. Councillor Ross Martin, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is to the Executive Leader. Several months ago in the Chamber, we agreed the action plan for the following the corporate peer review that happened last year. In that meeting, the Executive Leader gave an undertaking that this council would be updated on a regular basis on how we are doing on that action plan, but since that point we have not received any such update. With the team coming in a couple of weeks' time, I think it'd be useful if we got that update so we can go into that meeting fully briefed, so we can talk to the peers open and honestly. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, if you'll allow me to sit, sorry, I've overdone the standing. The answer is very happy to provide an update, and I will make sure that that's done in good time for that meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Barry Chapman, please.
Isn't it? Right, thank you, Chair. My question is for Councillor Taylor. I have to say that this evening I've been rather irked to see and hear comments about car parking charges and the benefit of having a free-hour car parking when it is the current policy which has decimated the high street in St Neots. There was, when the last strategy was introduced in, I believe, 2019, that strategy, I argued against it because it was quite obvious it was going to damage retail in St Neots. We now have 50% of our retail floor space empty. So it's no good providing 1 hour's free car parking when there's nowhere to shop. There is a question. We've lost employment, we've lost economic activity, and it's done severe damage to the town. Now, in this budget, there is an item which covers a small increase in parking revenue, and I'm asking Councillor Taylor if she would ensure that the economic disaster caused by the last ham-fisted strategy, which desperately needs to be replaced, can have an intelligent solution which supports residents and businesses rather than fleecing their pockets.
Thank you. Would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I think the last few words, fleecing residents' pockets and businesses' pockets, is a little bit harsh, but that's my opinion. Yes, I will support this. As you've heard tonight from Councillor Mickleborough and our leader, Councillor Conboy, that I spoke up about this at Cabinet. I'm passionate about this, as you know. And we will look holistically at this. There is so much that we can do with our car parking. You know, we can look at individual sites. We can look where we're not charging. We can look absolutely, at the occupancy of car parks, different solutions like parcel lockers. There is so much different things that we can add and principles to a new parking strategy. That there is so much, and it doesn't need to come from me. It's something that I would really push on a working group to look at this strategy. As you know, I spoke up on it on Cabinet, and I'm really passionate about that we get this right for our market towns. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to ask a supplementary question, Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Chair. Not really supplementary, but I'd be delighted to work with Simone Taylor, with members of the opposition here, and every single person on this council to provide a better solution to our parking than we were previously provided with. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now rapidly coming to the buffers of time restraint, so therefore, Councillor John Niche, you are going to ask the last question. Thank you.
I could be brief, so someone else might be able to jump in on this one. It's just it's almost a follow-up from Councillor Tevlin's one, actually, which I was just writing just now. It really follows up the notice we were given in, and it's generally, it could be to the leader or the portfolio holder. It's just a general question. Following the notice we were given by Angela Wimpey, Rayner, that's the one, the builder, that we were going to have a vast increase nationally of house building, and the figures that were obviously extended out to Huntingdonshire. I suppose my question is, obviously that has put us in tilted balance, and we've gone having provided a good source of property over the years, I think roughly 830, and now we've got to do 1200 plus, haven't we, which has bunged us into tilted balance, which is going to cause ruptures all round the district. I just wonder what pushback that we gave for those figures that were sent to us. What was our response to Mrs. Wimpey? Miss, actually, apologies.
I think you're referring to our Deputy Prime Minister, aren't you, Angela Rayner? Absolutely, yes. Well, I think one of the problems we had was there wasn't any transitional arrangements. I understand the reason why the government did what they did. We weren't pushing back because we were dealt with the hand and we had to deal with it. So we did have to calculate the figures pretty quickly. We did carry out a great deal of research. The team did, I think, a fabulous job. I think in some ways we've been the victim of our own success, because I said it in an earlier reply, we actually exceeded our housing targets by 164% during the last 4 years. So it will be a challenge for us. And as I said in reply to Councillor Tevlin, we actually had to getting our response to the local development scheme, which was also amended. We have to do that by the 6th of March. So the team have done a sterling job on that. But those of us who sit on DMC and LPAG, when that meets, as it possibly will again in the near future, will, I think, work closely together to try and to deal with the situation as best we can.
Thank you, Councillor Neave. Supplementary.
Yeah, thank you. It's just to come back on that. I'm surprised we haven't challenged it, because I know others have challenged. Whether or not they got a response or not, who knows? I see Councillor Wakeford's shaking his head, obviously in the knowledge of that one. My worry is, and it's going to be the worry for all of us, isn't it, that you mentioned our figures are reasonable at the moment. Majors applications are probably not particularly high as an application perspective. So the worry is for future, the rolling out, because all the ones we've gone through so far have been what's been done over the last 5 years, 4 years, 3 years. And now if the dip comes through, I'm just really concerned, and let's hope developers will come through, which we have no control of course. But it is just that worry that, one, we didn't challenge back to say, look, these are completely unreasonable figures. I suspect they're the same percentage rise in most, and I think I do agree with you. We're probably hoisted our own petard of doing such a good job in the past, haven't we? So,
well, in response to that, I think this is a national issue, isn't it? I think we're the only local authority area in Cambridge. Sorry, I think East Cambs are the only local authority area in Cambridgeshire that didn't have an increase in its housing targets. Ours went up by 50%, so it has been quite a challenge. But I think we have a good team at LPAG and DMC and a good officer support.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 9, which is the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority questions. This is a standing item which provides an opportunity for District Council members to ask questions on Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority matters, issues. The decision summaries from meetings held in December and January have been circulated with the agenda. Are there any questions? Councillor Ross-Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair. And if you'll indulge me slightly, there's a comment and then a question. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago, we all heard the news that Dr. Mayor Nick Johnson is not going to be standing at the next election. And whether you agreed or disagreed with what he did or what he stood for or how he delivered it, I think it's important that we recognise the work that he did put in and the strain that it put on himself and his family. So I would like to pass on my thanks to him for everything that he has done over the last few years. As I said, I may not necessarily agree with some of the things he's done, but I think it's just important for us to recognise when people do the job, it takes a lot out of them. So I think it's important that we recognise that and we thank him. My question is to the leader. We've seen recently that bus franchising has come in, which I think is going to be a good thing for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. But also, as that process was coming through, the ball was dropped, quite frankly, on the last round of procurement. Some of the things that I'm hearing are quite laughable, quite frankly, and also we're seeing the £12 limit that was set by the Combined Authority Board in that period that we were too busy focused on bus franchising. So what is the executive leader doing on the board to ensure that we're fixing these changes, we work out what the issues were and how we can resolve them, because we're throwing good money after bad money at this, and we need to make sure that it's right rather than wasting the taxpayers' money.
Councillor Conboy.
For you, Chair, and again, please forgive me for remaining seated. So I'm not going to comment on the procurement process. I will say that we have been briefed in confidence, because obviously there's a commercial confidence here. I will say that some of the things which appear to be being circulated in the public domain do not match the briefing I have had from senior officers. But I think I need to probably leave it there, because I think if we're not careful, we get into all sorts of difficulties which probably have some legal ramifications. Certainly, I have asked officers for their learning points from that experience. I think doing any public procurement is more challenging than most people realise. I personally have had to lead public procurement on behalf of government. It's not an easy process. There are sometimes things that have not been foreseen but could be, and sometimes there are things that you couldn't reasonably foresee. always a good procurement process has a period of reflection after it has been completed so that you do your lessons learned. My understanding is that officers are looking at that, and I would expect that to come back round. In terms of then how that franchising goes forward, obviously we are watching with great scrutiny, because we want to make sure that that works as effectively as we would expect it to. But it didn't get off to the start we'd all rather hoped, and that has put the timescales back, and we have raised that, all of us as leaders. So I'm pleased that at least we've jumped this hurdle, but those lessons learned are important. They'll also be very important to us as a district council, because although we have no intention of franchising buses, can I just reassure you on that, actually lessons about procurement when other people have those experiences are as valuable to us in terms of our procurement, although the complexities are often very different, circumstances are different, but we will also bring that back into the organisation and see if there's any lessons learned that we can equally take from it. Thank you for the question.
Councillor Martin, if you'd like to reply.
Just a supplementary, Chair. Obviously, in a couple of months' time, we'll be having the local elections where we will be having a new mayor, no matter what. Maybe the same party, but whatever happens, it will be a new mayor. What are you guys doing on the board to ensure that any new mayor, whoever it may be, isn't hamstrung and stopped from doing what they want to deliver, which they see is the best for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, rather than having to force ourselves down the line that Dr. Nick Johnson may want the Combined Authority to go?
Yes. Through Chair, to you, Chair, if I may. That's a really interesting question. Obviously, the mayor, if you like, is obviously elected to have that position, sets out their particular policy agenda that they wish to deliver, and a new mayor, when elected, will do that. But don't forget that majority of the decisions are board-led decisions. So I hope that anybody coming new into that role, regardless of party, comes with fresh ideas. That's what you'd always hope in an election period. You'd always hope that somebody comes in enthused, inspired for what they think would be good to go forward. But at the end of the day, it is also a board-led set of decisions. So some things are already in train. There will inevitably, I suspect, be new things that are wanted. Importantly, as we go through local government reorganisation, there is going to need to be change both at the Combined Authority and then at district level. So I guess we are all writing on the new bits of paper to articulate what the ambitions are for residents going forward. And I hope that that will be reflected in the incoming mayor's agenda, because that's an evolving piece that's happening around them. And at this point in time, they won't have any more clarity on that than we are able to say and share publicly. Thank you.
Thank you. Appears there are no more questions, in which case we will move on to item number 10, outcomes from committees and panels. Now is an opportunity for members to raise any issues or ask questions arising from recent meetings of the council's committees and panels. Are there any questions arising from recent meetings? The same rules apply in terms of questions as stated previously. Thank you. Councillor Alban, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Kerr. I did give us a little bit of notice that this was coming, although not the details. I referred earlier on, Mr. Chairman, to the collegiate nature of the Overview and Scrutiny Customers Environment and Partnerships panel that I'm pleased to serve on. And the last meeting, for anybody that wasn't there, that didn't see it on the YouTube channel, was, I think, one of our best. There was proposals from members of one party, not that it's always clear who's on one party and who's not, seconded by members from other parties. It was one of those meetings I came away from feeling positive, feeling that as a backbench councillor I was making a difference. Therefore, I was really disappointed with the response from the Cabinet to what was proposed. And for anybody who wasn't there, members proposed that the leader be asked to contact the Energy Secretary to request a reduction in the import tax on HVOs, to encourage the Cabinet to reach out to other organisations to develop further partnerships beyond those which we'd already committed to establish a price where the fuel would become prohibitive and to seek a switch back to road diesels if necessary. And I think this is one of the most creative ones, to create a cross-partner steering group of relevant organisations and local producers within Cambridgeshire to develop the production of fuel within the district. So my question from those comments, Mr. Chairman, is I was disappointed by the response of the Cabinet. How disappointed was the chair of the panel?
Thank you. Councillor Kerr. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Alban. I was disappointed too. I agree. I was disappointed. We came up with some really good recommendations. I do know the Cabinet discussed them thoroughly, and it's their decision to follow through on our recommendations, whether they're going to adopt them or not. That is their decision. When it comes to feedback, we are actually putting a loop into the system, which will give us feedback about our recommendations and any other points that we raise, which will be excellent, on our newly revised process that we've been working on and rebuilding within ONS. But I agree, I was disappointed as well.
Thank you. Yes, we turn. Yeah.
I thank Councillor Kerr for her comments, and will she accept my assurance? And I'm taking a bit of a chance here and saying I'm speaking on behalf of the rest of the panel that we will continue to work in a collegiate way to challenge and to provoke and to feedback, because there's more than one way of being green, and it comes across multiple different the colours represented in this party, in this chamber.
Are you happy, Councillor Kerr?
Yes, how we work collectively, it's excellent, and I love the fact that we don't look at parties, we just work together for the best of our district, and we, as you rightly said, we will support and back each other's nominations because we work so well together, and we will carry on doing that, and our role at ONS is to challenge what goes on.
Councillor Hassel.
Thank you. Also for Councillor Kerr as chair of the Environment and Communities ONS committee. Yeah, just to give, if you like, the other side of the house support for what was just previously mentioned there. I think my view is that we have made OEN scrutiny far more effective. I think Cabinet need to understand that as well. I think it's really important that the feedback loop, it's not good enough, frankly, to just have the discussion at Cabinet. There needs to be a formal response and to each recommendation, remembering that each recommendation in this particular case was unanimously voted for, and I think each of them was pretty reasonable. I think there are some things that it's great that the Cabinet had the discussion, but I understand there were some misinterpretations of some of the recommendations. So I think that we should agree at our committee precisely what the wording is before they go to Cabinet, so that there is no misinterpretation.
Councillor Hassel, are you asking a question within this as well? Thank you.
Yeah. So my question is, will you support that?
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. If you allow me to respond as Vice Chair, I do agree with you, Councillor Hassel, and I think that there was a conversation that needs to happen with Cabinet, and I'm happy to do that informally with colleagues. We have made a whole lot of improvement to overview scrutiny. I'm not going to pretend that we're there yet. It's we have come a long way, and I want to thank all members of the panel for the work, and the other panel for the work that's happened in that. There are some areas of best practice from other councils. It may be worth us exploring, learning what works, learning what doesn't work, and possibly bringing that to this council. So I agree, and I think it's an evolving area of work to go forward with.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 11, variations to the membership of committees and panels. May I invite the Executive Leader to report on changes to the Cabinet? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Changes to the Cabinet, I think we've already made, but Councillor Sally Howell has joined the Cabinet, so I'm just recording that formally at this meeting so that it's on record. Am I also permitted to update a new member to overview and scrutiny, please, to the Performance and Growth panel, which is Councillor Ben Pitt. Thank you. That's all our changes. Oh, hang on. And yeah, we don't do that now. Sorry. A bit preemptive on our side. Can I please... He's coming on. He's not coming off.
Thank you for his cabinet service.
Oh, and thank you. Prompted ably by my deputy, I haven't had an opportunity, I think, publicly to thank Councillor Ben Pitt for his service to Cabinet. He knows I've said that numerous times to him. Councillor Pitt, on behalf of all of us on Council, thank you very much for your long service to Cabinet, and we are looking forward to your service on the Overview and Scrutiny Panel. Thank you.
Do any of the group leaders wish to inform us of any changes? Thank you. No, thank you very much. In that case, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.